Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Living in McKenzie County, the podcast. We are filming in March. This will be dropping in April. So we're in the midst of March Madness right now. Exciting times. We are in season 1, episode 12, and we are very excited today to be talking about and to the Rural Leadership North Dakota program. And we're going to go around the room today. My name is Vawnita Best, Community and Business Development Director, City of Watford City. And I have a co-host with me today. We're going to go around the room. We're going to be conversational. We're going to be long form. And we are going to talk all about the Rural Leadership North Dakota program. I am going to take lap 2 to specifically talk about my class, the best class. But with that, I'm going to turn it to the left. Daniel, would you like to introduce yourself as we go around the room?
Sure. My name is Daniel Stenberg, and I serve as the Economic Development Director for McKenzie County. I also was a part of Rural Leadership North Dakota about 10 years ago. It's a 2-year cycle, and so I was part of Class 7. Vicki?
Vicki Monsen, and I am the market president at Cornerstone Bank in Watford City. And I also was fortunate to be in the very first class of Rural Leadership North Dakota, and that started in 2003. So a long time ago, 22 years ago, and it's been fun to come back and visit about it, I guess.
Hello, I'm Katie Tyler. I'm the Program Director and Extension Specialist for Rural Leadership North Dakota, and I have the privilege and honor of helping lead this class as they go on their leadership journey over the course of 2 years.
Okay, so honestly, Katie, thank you for being with us. Yeah. You made the trip out. You are stationed in Fargo.
Correct.
And so we're coming to you from Watford City today. And before we kick it back to you to talk about the program, I just want to point out that Class 5 is the best class.
Which remains to be seen.
Yeah, and we will develop supporting documentation for that as the hour goes on. But Katie, honestly, can you tell us about what rural leadership is and your current class? And then we'll go back through the history books and get to those past classes.
I would love to. So Rural Leadership North Dakota, or as we often call it, RLND, is a 2-year leadership journey that started back in the early 2000s because there was a need that was identified from both NDSU, the Extension Service, the Department of Agriculture, the state of North Dakota, that leaders, we needed to have leadership development for our leaders across North Dakota. And so we created this program. It's seen several iterations in terms of when they meet, how often we meet, where we go, what that looks like. But it's always remained a 2-year program. We currently have 10 seminars in the course of those 2 years. 7 are in-state, so we go around the state to various locations. 1 is a regional seminar where we tend to go to Minneapolis. 1 is a national seminar where we go to DC. And then there's also an international seminar where we go and explore the culture and leadership differences and agricultural similarities and, of course, differences to North Dakota and an international location. The purpose is to strengthen our rural communities. That is our goal, is to try to develop leaders that help in their communities. Every class member, since we've started, has created a leadership project, which I'm sure we'll jump into and hear about the 3 of your leadership projects that, of course, helped your own communities. And that continues throughout. Our alumni still are investing back in their communities. Our alumni association works hard to provide grants to those alumni to help support those projects. And so we know the impact of Rural Leadership North Dakota is long-term. And our goal is to develop people who care about North Dakota.
Excellent. Thank you, Katie.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we'll do now, we'll probably spin back around to you periodically for some stats, more information on the Alumni Association, kind of the size and the scope of the cohort across the state, the network of RLND leaders. But we definitely brought 3 alumni on to have a conversation today. And I'm going to challenge Vicki and Daniel to kind of think back to when you were going through the process of thinking about, am I ready to sign up for this commitment? And I can tell you my story. We moved back in 2008. And then, of course, right after we moved back for, the rural lifestyle and the ranching lifestyle, the Bakken was picking up rapidly. And I came into Gene Veter's office, our economic development director at the time, and said to him, I feel like things are spinning out of control. What can I do to make a difference? And he said, I'm going to challenge you. Take a look at this program and know that the JDA scholarships applicants, and the only commitment is that you have to run for office afterwards or serve in a civic capacity. And so I mulled through that and ultimately ended up being a part of the 2011 to 2013 Class 5. But let's talk a little bit, Vicki and Daniel, about the process that you went through in determining if you were going to commit to it, what that commitment looked like, and how you saw it as a benefit to your own personal development and as a benefit to your community.
Yeah, it was quite a thought process, I guess. I was probably mostly encouraged by my employer, both Scott and Dale. My employers were very encouraging, very supportive of a lot of the community efforts, so felt it would be beneficial to, me and to our business and to the community. And I had always been involved with stuff, but never to this probably level. And so thought over it and had to visit with my family too. It was a 2-year commitment and I had little kids at the time. And so and I think even there is still a place on the application that your spouse or your partner signs saying, they're in full support of you doing this because it is time away from your family. But I guess I could see the benefit of it both for me and the community and kind of just pushing you a little bit more instead of just staying in your comfort zone, kind of pushed you out. And so I took the plunge and I was part of the first class and it was a lot of fun.
And when you were deliberating on, because you select a capstone project, when you were deliberating on your project, and I will say you have an amazing project that is still creating and adding value to our community, really filled an important gap in our community at the time. Can you talk about how you worked through your project selection?
It took a long time. We always knew that my project was housing, and that's a very broad subject. And even when we went to do our book, you do a final book at the end. My project actually was just getting started. It wasn't even, the townhomes weren't built or anything. But I just kept thinking about it. In my role at the bank, I was currently a residential real estate lender. And specifically in that role, you seen the need of the community. People were coming in looking for houses. So it just kept kind of glaring at me, I guess, that you need to do something. But I guess without this program, I probably would have never, ventured out and looked at new programs and creating housing authorities and, seeing legislation pass and things like that. So it was just something that was always there. Didn't know how big it was going to be.
Very cool. Okay, Daniel, talk us through the deliberation. In your mind with yourself.
Yeah, so I moved back to Watford. I grew up here, and then I moved back in 2015. And then this opportunity came up. I believe it was Jan Dodge or probably the extension office that had brought it up. Jan Dodge was a previous RLND member. And it was really kind of this opportunity to, it seems like a lot of learning happens if you go to college, or things like that. You get to go in the book in college and then you go do life because you're all prepared for it, right? No, not necessarily. And so this was a kind of a time I'd been out of college for 10 years, I guess. And it was an opportunity to go learn about North Dakota. But then there's also you need to read a book, or something, but before each class or something like that, you have some homework to do. And so you get a nice mix of some kind of, book knowledge, but then you're seeing it applied throughout the state in many different ways. We got to see an ethanol plant. We got to see the Fargo Theater. You get to go do a little bit of everything in Minot. You see a safflower plant doing its thing, all of these different things. And I just like the general kind of knowing a little bit about everything that's happening. And this really fit the bill, especially once we added in the national to DC trip and then the international trip too. So it was a good experience. And Vawnita, we have 4 class members that are currently in the North Dakota legislature. And so a lot of people refer to class 7 as the best class. And I think that is one for class 7. Back to you.
Well, so Katie, you
I see.
Katie, you have been in your role since
2021.
2021. Okay, perfect.
You started during COVID.
I started during COVID.
That's an interesting time to start.
Yes. So Dr. Marie Vitston, who was the program director from the start, who, of course, led your classes fearlessly through all of the seminars and situations, retired, and I have the pleasure of following in her footsteps, and the foundation that she created has just been amazing. And so I started in 2021 in the midst of the COVID class that faced a lot of challenges and really learned about resilience and leadership, which was exciting.
So we made it to like minute 7 without saying Marie's name, but now, so everybody who's playing bingo with the RLND cards, it was minute 7.
You can't talk about RLND and not talk about Marie. She's just a phenomenal leader who, again, created this program that has left this lasting legacy in North Dakota, and she deserves all the mentions in the world.
There we go.
Perfect. Yes. So, class 5 was there were a couple classes, and I think there were some different programmatic changes that were made through the process and the iterations of one class to the next. Class 5 was the first class that truly had an international trip with it. And we traveled to Brazil, which was incredibly, once in a lifetime trip. It's one thing to get to travel internationally. It's another to have a fully guided learning experience. But I remember thinking a portion of the way into the trip, because we were a large class, there were 24 of us. And, one of the first things you do when you do your first 7 or your 7 in-state seminars is you spend the initial 1 or 2 seminars learning about yourselves and about your class. And I remember we had the DISC assessment come in, and our class was like 80% D's.
Yeah.
This is not normal, folks.
I mean, it's not normal. I don't know what the percentage is. I think it's under 20% in a normal cohort.
Really?
But I remember thinking like a day 7 of Brazil, and it was, but Marie always was so good about keeping us lined out while still recognizing that we're all adults and 80% of us are strong Ds. And she just maneuvered that so gracefully. And yes, we definitely appreciate her and everything she did to launch the program, grow the program. So I don't know if anybody else wants to talk at all about your international journeys
or lack of international. There's something about prototyping. Like sometimes it's cool to be first, and sometimes it's even better to be.
In this case, it wasn't cool to be first. We did not get the international trip. We were always told that as alumni, we could always attend one of the other international trips as their funding sources got built up and stuff, that we could attend one of those. I haven't taken the opportunity to join any of those, but would love to. I looked at just recently when you guys had just got back from Ghana and was reading the alumni newsletter. I'm like, oh man, I wish I could go on an international trip.
Yeah. And so that was a unique component for our experience as well. We went to Vietnam and Thailand. Most of the time was in Vietnam, but really sometimes when you say you learn something by looking at it the opposite way. And so North Dakota is like the size of Vietnam, but in terms of actual space, but in terms of numbers of people, there was 3 towns with 10 plus million people that we went to in Vietnam and Thailand. Yeah. And the farms, I mean, it's communism, so you don't own the land, but it's about 2 acres that you could get from the government, and they would grow oranges. I mean, and so just so different than North Dakota. And yet there is still some commonalities when you look in the farmer's eyes, things like that. These people work the land, and it's similar. There's some similarities to our wheat farmers and our sunflower farmers or bean farmers that we have here, but then there's a lot of differences, a lot of different machinery, things like that. But to me, that really helped understand, oh, this is how North Dakota is different. Sometimes you have to leave your community in order and then come back to understand kind of some of the unique aspects. And that international trip really did it for me in our class, I think.
Very cool.
Sounds very cool.
And I was just ribbing Vicki on that because she was telling us how class 1 is the OG and the best class. Right. So, but in all seriousness, Katie, when you do approach a new cohort, a new class, how do you go through the process of determining what that international trip is? Because it's definitely a highlight and a recruiting piece of the program, no doubt.
So I, Katie Tyler, the program director, don't decide that. Our council decides that, and the council that is made up of some alumni, as well as some industry leaders from across North Dakota and community leaders from across North Dakota, sit down and think through several things: safety. What does it compare and contrast to North Dakota? Agriculture, community development, all those things that we're trying to get out of the learning objectives. And so the council looks through all of these items and then whittles it down piece by piece until we decide. And we typically don't decide the international trip location until after the class has been selected. Okay. As well as, and we don't announce it until about a year out. And so, there is a little bit of challenging yourself to be comfortable with what you don't know or what you're uncomfortable with. And I think that's part of the learning growth that can happen in a program such as RLND, learning to be okay with some of that unknown, especially as a strong D, as I am as well. Class 10 is also in the running, I think, for some of the most Ds in a class. So it's always, it's fun to learn how you work in a group like that. And I think that's the other thing that you get in a program like RLND is that togetherness and how do we operate with a bunch of strong leaders all doing good in our programs. But for the international trip, I actually don't decide. The council consistently has asked me, where do you want to go? And I say, I'll go anywhere. I think there's value in a number of different places to compare and contrast North Dakota values, leadership here in the United States versus leadership elsewhere. And so I think how we do that can be accomplished in a number of different locations. And that's part of the fun, I think, of RLND. And alumni, especially from class 1, deserve a trip. And so hopefully the Alumni Association will be able to plan one soon that poor class 1, 2, and 3, and 4 can go to. And not Canada. Someplace other than Canada. Someplace. Not that Canada doesn't have wonderful learning opportunities.
Very good. Very cool. Well, since Daniel, I'm not keeping tally marks or anything, but since Daniel's one up on me right now, I will say that class 5 had the honor of, or as a member of class 5, hosting one of the in-state seminars in Watford City. And it was...
So did we, but yeah, that's fine.
It was especially meaningful because we started planning these things in 2011. You sit down and start planning your seminars. And when I first made the phone calls to the hotels in town, nobody could hold. It was looking like we were going to have to cancel our seminar in Watford City because we were booming at the time, and every hotel room had extended stay guests in them that were,
couldn't get 24 rooms or whatever you needed.
That had to be a challenge.
It was very challenging. And so we actually ended up the first occupants of the Watford, which is one of our newer hotels. They opened in June and we showed up a couple days later, and it was a great experience. But what I remember about that, so class of 24, everybody made it out, and I think everybody was really shocked because they heard the stories. They're like, you can't even make a left turn in town. Like, you don't understand. You just don't understand what I'm talking about. And they got out here. And all of a sudden, your cohort class, your group of core, members, they're now advocates for you. So I think maybe talking a little bit more about the relationships that you build within the class, your class, the networking, the support of each other. Can you talk a little bit about the cohort model and why RLND utilizes that model?
Yeah. So each class, and I think every class identifies as their class, as you've all pointed out, whether you're claiming to be the best class and then the next class is also claiming to be the best class. They're all wonderful classes. But I think that speaks to the relationships that you build over this intense program over 2 years. And so, and you can from my perspective, from my seat, I get to watch that evolve from the first seminar where everyone's a little hesitant and kind of like, am I supposed to be here? I'm not really sure why I'm here. I feel like they're maybe better at this than I am, to the last seminar that is just everyone coming together and supporting and being advocates for each other. So within that cohort model, it's the same group of folks. Typically, currently, the council, we're hoping for 20 to 22 people per class. And so those 20 to 22 people remain together in each seminar. We do expect that you attend every seminar to its entirety. And part of that is to build those relationships. And so you get to really understand your classmates and the challenges they face. We spend a lot of time talking about that, putting real life into kind of the theory and or back and forth, right? What does the theory look like in real life? And so I think that speaks to what the cohort can do for you. Our alumni network, though, on the other hand, is almost at about 200 alumni from across the state. Those alumni are invited back to leadership dinners throughout the current classes, seminars in a location close to them. Unfortunately, we haven't been to Watford City in the last 2 classes that I've been here, but hopefully we'll be back soon. And so, but that's a chance for alumni to come meet the current class, for the current class to also expand their network beyond. And I think even when maybe you meet an alumni that wasn't part of your class, I watch alumni still embrace them as part of the RLND family, which again speaks to, I think, what that builds. It builds this relationship and network that truly is across North Dakota, working all for the same goal, which is to promote rural North Dakota.
What is rural North Dakota? Well, I mean, I guess, and this is for anybody. Well, it is. There's so many different ways to define it. Like USDA says it's a community of 50,000 or less. Well, that's like pretty much all of North Dakota, save a couple of towns. But is there something what makes rural communities unique as compared to a urban community? Anybody have ideas?
I'll start, and this maybe doesn't answer your question in what makes them unique, but I think what was one of the most I think eye-opening moments for me, even as a program director in this current class, we're in class 10. When we went to Minneapolis, we went and toured the Phillips neighborhood. And we spent a lot of time talking with their economic developer who's worked on housing initiatives and worked on recovery centers. It's a Native American housing center in Minneapolis. Okay. And when we left and we get back on the bus to drive back to Fargo, and of course I'm making the class go through some highs and lows. What are some things we learned? And someone said, I learned that community is the same, that they also want the support. They want to find a place to eat together, to gather together, to build those relationships and networks. And I was like, that's true. That is what we learned there, right? So we're in a city, a true city, maybe not a North Dakota city. And we were comparing that back to when we were in Oaks, 2 seminars ago where we saw the same kind of things. And so I think that's what's so fun about RLND is I didn't think that through, but that's what a class member brought up. And I was like, man, that really made me think through what is my definition of community and how does community shape itself? And in my mind, community shapes itself differently in different size communities, but I think we all want the same thing, and that's belonging, welcoming, and togetherness, right? We want to feel like we're part of something.
Definitely. I mean, and I think also like in rural communities, it's either an advantage or a disadvantage. I mean, people talk about the value of a Class B school, and you get to kind of do a little bit of everything.
Yep,
if you want to run for mayor, run for mayor. Maybe start on city council first, something like that. But I mean, in a huge community, okay, you're going to have tons of experience, tons of name recognition, different things like that. But you have the opportunity to make a difference.
Yeah.
I mean, and you can see it. If I want my park to have more things. Okay, go serve on the park board. Okay, you're going to go talk to 10 neighbors. You're going to get your name on the ballot. You can go make a difference. I mean, I think some people find that scary, but I think other people, that's why they choose. I want
that opportunity.
I want that opportunity to make a difference, So I think that's cool. But
as a Class B alum from North Central North Dakota, I can't imagine going to a big school. And I graduated in 2000, and so Watford was a big school to me, which Watford wasn't even that big, right, at that time. But I think to myself, I don't know how would I have found my classes in a Class A school? Like, that was overwhelming to me. And I agree. You get to really, truly see your impact in small town, rural North Dakota, which is really fun.
When you were talking about common goals, it kind of brought back, we went up to Botno, not that Botno was important for this story, but one of the activities, and they didn't tell us the purpose of the activity until afterwards. And so that's a little bit of the uncertainty, but it was just kind of like a little bit of an eye roll. Oh boy, what kind of exercise is this? But it was for 1 minute, we sat across from somebody and it was like, find as many common things as you can with this person right across from you. Are you left-handed? How many siblings do you have? Are you the oldest, the youngest? Do you like skiing? Do you not like skiing? Have you broken a bone? Things like that. And then by the end, we were supposed to tally how many things that we remembered or that we met, that we both had in common. 16, 17. Vawnita would like this because it's very competitive oriented.
Strong D.
Strong D. But at the end then, they were like, okay, you just found all these things in common. Now think about that when you're faced with a situation that people are on opposing sides with, and maybe it's a law that's being debated or something like that. Step back, try to see as many common things that you guys have. Okay, I want to live in a safe community. I want my neighbors to be kind. I want a good healthcare. I want all these things. And then, okay, we have all of these things in common. You think that this way will be better for the community. I think this way will be better. But because I know that you are caring about the community, and as I care about the community and the community that I live in, okay, I think we're on the same page for 90% of the way. It's just kind of this last thing. And I can still feel better even if we still don't come to that same conclusion as to how to get there. We're still on the same team and we're going towards the same goal. So that was actually quite impactful. You start out with the uncertainty of why are we doing this? But then it was like, oh, okay, I think there's something to that. So it was fun. It was good. It was a good experience.
Can buy into that.
All right.
Oh, very good. Okay, the tally marks. Daniel is in the lead.
Just saying.
Class 7's going to love it.
Yes. Okay, so 7 in-state seminars.
Correct.
A regional seminar, a national seminar, an international seminar. Should we go? We started with the international. Should we go to the national seminar now? Washington, D.C. Who wants to maybe share some of your highlights or the things that were really kind of an eye-opener to you on the Washington, D.C. seminar?
Good question.
several things. I had never been to Washington, D.C., so it was a great opportunity. And just being part of a group, I think we had, a lot more opportunities to meet people and do different things, being part of a program, meeting your representatives and things like that. And, just all the things about being in a big city. I mean, I remember going to the subway and I was a bit terrified.
You're not talking about the place you get sandwiches.
No. Riding the subway underground and you're kind of looking around like, wow, this is how we have to commute around Washington, D.C. And I had never been on anything like that. So, and I was an adult. And so it was just, that part was eye-opening, but just the other opportunities. We got to, I believe it was, we got to sit in on the swearing in of Condoleezza Rice.
Oh, very cool.
So it was a very cool opportunity. Yeah.
So
there you go, class one.
Yeah, class one. That's a pretty cool thing class one got to do. I love that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I had lived in DC from 2005 to 2010. So then to go there in 2016, that was, I think, my second time going back. And so it was still 6 years difference. Had 9/11 happened when you had gone? Did you go 2001?
2004.
Oh, 4. Yeah. Okay, yeah. But even since 2010, the security has gotten even
way different,
more strict and everything. And so to kind of see what changes, what stays the same, different things. One of the trips that we did on the DC trip is we went up to the Battle of Gettysburg, and even though I had lived in DC, I'd never been to that site before, and that was just an interesting way to portray a battlefield, but it wasn't just a battlefield. It was kind of talking about the American experience, and I really enjoyed that too. So it was a good experience. What did you think about your DC trip?
Yeah, I feel like thinking back to that is confirming that I am a policy junkie. I had been to DC 2 times prior to, once with 4-H Youth and then with Close Up. Okay. So this was my 3rd trip, only post 9/11, and it was a totally different experience than prior to. But the things that I remember pretty vividly is we sat in on the Farm Bill hearing. And so being a group of North Dakota, RLND, mostly ag background, but ag and business background, we were expecting to hear testimony and input on things related to production agriculture. And almost the entirety of that hearing was about the SNAP program, the WIC program. And you start to realize that, North Dakota, we're on a production side perspective, but most of the country, probably, 98.5% of the country is on a consumer perspective. And so that was a real eye-opener just listening to that hearing. I also remember that I think most classes probably get the opportunity to meet with their delegation, their congressional delegation. And at the time, Senator Heitkamp was in office, and she's such a bulldog.
Yep.
I just remember taking all of that in. She always, and I think if she ever listens to this, she'll agree, she always looked exhausted and like she had done 1,000 things that day already, and such an advocate and passionate about North Dakota and agriculture. And then lastly, and this is probably I don't know if it's funny or not, it was a interesting experience. So somewhere along the line, HSUS at the time had been pretty aggressive on both state policy and putting money into some different measures.
HSUS, what?
Humane Society of the United States.
Okay, thanks.
And also on the federal level, obviously. So somebody got somebody from HSUS lined up to come in and speak to us, and it was a straight up ambush. And, I was unapologetic about it, honestly, because they were just really at a point in time in the history of that organization where they were really pushing some disruptive agendas and putting resources in places. So anyway, yeah, that was very interesting. That was, I think, one of those times when we caused Marie's blood pressure to go very high.
I doubt it.
Well, maybe not, but anyway. But
She remained calm and cool.
She always remained calm.
That may be why Class 5 is known as the infamous class, though.
yes, I think we get a tally mark for that. Now we're all tied up.
Now you're all
again.
tied up for sure.
We're good again. So really appreciated that DC trip, though. That was really, I would say, transformational, honestly. So, yeah.
I think RLND is lucky in that because we're from North Dakota, our state delegation typically is very good to us. Senator Hoeven was around when RLND was created. And so he is always really great for the class when we go to DC. I think it's a great opportunity also to explore not only policy development, which some people are junkies for and others are not. But if you're not as interested in that, there's still opportunities for you to look at your own personal leadership development by going to Gettysburg. Gettysburg, the battle, is a history of leadership lessons. This current class 10, spent some time at the Holocaust Museum, and then we had a museum expert come in and talk through what does that mean? What does it mean when leaders do bad things? Which I think was another interesting perspective to think through. What does that look like? So DC provides, I think, such a learning laboratory for leadership at both a policy level and a non-policy level. I also think it gives you perspective in North Dakota to remind us the rest of the country maybe isn't the breadbasket that we see every day, but that's how policies are being made. DC is one of my favorite seminars. I say that about every seminar, though, so that's probably really not fair. But DC is one of my favorites.
So when you say breadbasket, I mean, so my dad came and visited me once in DC. And I lived with two other guys in a small row house. And he looked at our fridge and freezer, and he opened it up, and he was like, "This is for 3 of you guys." And I was like, yeah. He's like, what if the power goes out?
Yeah.
Different things like that. What if, the supply lines get cut? Because back at home, we've got 2 deep freezers, a fridge and a freezer, and canning from the past year. All of that food, we could survive fine for, a few months or whatever. But you are in those urban communities. It is a much different experience than rural North Dakota, for good or for ill. I mean, there's pros and cons to all of those places.
Right.
Very cool. So as we work our way down to the next level, what about the regional seminar? Vicki, did you guys go to Minneapolis, St. Paul?
No. Our regional would probably be considered Bismarck or something.
Or Fargo, maybe. So
sorry, OG.
We did not get to do that.
Class 1 set a great foundation. But they also didn't, I think you only had 9 seminars. So they didn't get that experience.
Sorry, beta test. Okay.
No.
Daniel, what, Minneapolis, St. Paul?
Minneapolis, yeah. We went to CHS, the Senex Harvest States, which has obviously a big impact in North Dakota agriculture. I'm trying to remember everything we did. I think we went to a food market. We went to some or more urban areas where the mills used to be, different things like that. Yeah, it was good.
Federal Reserve. We went to the Federal Reserve.
Oh, that's a good one.
No, I did not.
Cool.
You probably would not find that profound in any way.
I only worked at the Federal Reserve in D.C., so just good job.
What I remember, take away from there, obviously, the Twin Cities are always a good experience, but I remember we spent a lot of time on the cooperative model. And looking back, when you come back to rural North Dakota or rural anywhere, it really was the cooperative models that built out the rural communities at that time. So I think it was an added appreciation for all of the places that model exists in our upper Midwest region. So. Katie, any takeaways from the Minneapolis St. Paul trips of other classes?
Good question. I think that that seminar has traditionally been based around kind of that cooperative model leadership, right? How is that different than a different, business model. And I think that this current class, we spent some time at CHS, which is the number 1 cooperative in the world. We also spent some time with Land O'Lakes, which is the number 3, I believe, cooperative organization in the world. And I think hearing from them from this large scale perspective, right? How are they still drilling it down into North Dakota was really interesting for us to get to spend time with the CEOs or the vice presidents and then look that through our lens, saying, but here are the issues we're seeing at the local level, and have those leaders listen to the leaders we're bringing to them was really exciting and fun. I think what I love most about the regional seminar is we're taking them to Minneapolis, St. Paul, typically, which we've all probably been there, right? That's a big city close to us. But I think almost every single alum I've talked to says, I did things in Minneapolis, St. Paul that I didn't know existed there. And so, we're not going to go to the Mall of America. We're not going to see a Twins game. While that might be something we do to have some fun, it's not the main purpose, and that's not the key takeaway. I think thinking on a regional level too, this current class spent some time talking with the Northern Crops Institute about what is happening even in Fargo. We spent time talking about regional healthcare. We spent time talking about what does that look like. And specifically, as rural North Dakota, stays rural and access to healthcare gets harder and harder. Looking at these issues from a regional model is helpful. Housing, right? Can we do housing development on a regional scale rather than just a community scale? And so I think that's what's fun about the regional seminars. We get to explore kind of that next step up from your community. What can we do to make some change in that larger area? We also did a gangster tour of St. Paul, both Class 9 and Class 10, and highly recommend that. You should be jealous of that, too. We drove around, had a gangster on our seminar bus, so it was pretty exciting. Yeah.
That does sound interesting.
Yeah.
Katie gets a tally mark.
Alumni trip. That'll be another alumni trip. We'll go back to Minneapolis.
Oh, that sounds excellent. Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good. So then let's talk a little bit, I think, about highlights from the in-state seminars. And I remember appreciating all of the rural communities that we got to spend time in, because you might go there for a basketball game, or you might, you might be in and out in the same day, but the opportunity to spend 1 or 2 nights in these communities and find the gems that you otherwise probably wouldn't experience if it wasn't for the cohort and guided model. So I guess maybe just seeing what everybody's experience was.
One of the ones that kind of stood out is we went to Oaks. I had never been to Oaks before, but it's even on one of our brochures. We toured the Hutterite colony that was near Oaks and just learned about their culture and how they're such their own community, and just learned how they built that whole community together and how they share in everything and all the work and all the goods that they produce and everything. But that was very, very interesting, visiting that
that
colony.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so that was my first time spending time on the Turtle Mountain Reservation where we had a class. We did some stuff at the Peace Gardens, and 2 of our members were part of the tribe there. Okay. And so there was that added a whole nother element. We did some cultural experiences. There was drum circles that was the first time I'd ever been a part of a drum circle, and got to see the Sand Haven Sanitarium. That was my first time I'd ever seen that space. So yeah, and then it just adds a lot more when it's a community, because usually the trips that we went on, the community had 1 to 2 class members, and so they were kind of showing us their home, and so that added a lot to the experience, because you had seen them maybe in Bismarck, but then now we got to show them when they came to Watford, show our friends our community, and then they got to show us their community, and it was a good experience that way too.
That's cool. Very cool. Well, of course, getting people here to Watford was a highlight, but also we were in Bowman, And I always, kind of think of Bowman and Watford as having a lot of fundamental similarities. And so Andrea Bowman is actually a Class 5 classmate of mine. And so she was a host for that seminar. And we saw some very, very, very rural stops and opportunities of rural agricultural families adding value to their businesses with retail. And at the time, online shopping was just becoming a thing. I mean, it was kind of, I just aged myself, but it wasn't super common at the time. And so seeing how those value added enterprises fit into those traditional farm and ranch models was really fun, exciting. And then, of course, getting back to being a kind of a policy person, I really appreciated our Bismarck seminar. And I remember very specifically meeting with the League of Cities there and Connie Sprincenatic at the time, who was getting close to retirement and had been with the League for quite some time, provided the overview on lobbying and, the assembly. And that was something that was really, really interesting to probably our whole class. But I think a lot of our classes, mostly that one or two, the one or two C's that we found in the class.
Those poor S's.
Everybody's
just trying to make everyone happy.
Just trying to survive.
So for our listeners who don't know what these letters are,
right.
We're not saying Democrats or sarcastics or introverts or something. It's the DISC profile.
The DISC profile.
Can you tell us about what that is?
Yeah. So it's a personal assessment that we use in RLND. I think every class has.
I think we did.
I'm pretty sure every class has completed the DISC profile. And it really helps you understand your working preferences, as well as how those interact with others. And so if you're a strong D and you really like that control, or if you're an I and you really like to come up with ideas and, brainstorming, if you're an S and you really want to make sure everyone is feeling comfortable with the situation, or if you're a C and you like tasks and lists and you just want to get it done, all of those people are part of our everyday lives and teams. And so I feel like the DISC is a great way. We have been starting off the seminars with, or the class with that. So the first seminar we go through it to kind of have that conversation throughout the whole cohort, right? Of what does this mean if we're in the midst of a struggle? Well, is it because we're all D's saying it's my way or the highway? And maybe I need to learn to compromise. But yes, we're using those terms probably inappropriately right now with an audience that might not know it. But everything DISC is what it's called, and certainly it's fun. What I love about the in-state seminars is RLND can go back to the same location, the same rural small town, and each class can have a very different experience because we have those class members who are from that area helping plan the seminars, pull out the leaders that they know. And I think that's what's really exciting. When you bring the current class together in a location, and if you went to the same places and say, well, what did you do? It's always different. The schedule doesn't look the same, which I think is one of the strengths of the program, is that we're flexible and really want to maintain that. What are the emerging issues and how can we address those while also helping understand some of those basics? So,
and both of you had them in Watford City.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I bet they're very different. I bet their schedules are very different. But yeah, I think that's one of the strengths of the program and the most fun parts, because I can sometimes think, oh, we're going to go. So for example, we're going to Belcourt next week, actually. Oh, wow. And, I could have had a preconceived notion about what I thought that seminar would look like. But the class members that helped plan that took some things in a different direction, and I'm really looking forward to that seminar. I think it's going to be great, and it looks nothing like the schedule you had, sure. Other than we are going to the Peace Gardens. That is happening. And we're staying at the Sky Dancer Casino, because that's the only hotel lodging available in Belcourt, North Dakota. Mm-hmm. But other than that, it looks different, and I think that's exciting.
I think what's kind of cool about it, too, is that all of your class members have to help plan one of the seminars. And the closest one to us when I was in it was Williston. So I had to help some people and kind of learn about things. I mean, even though we think Williston is very close, there's a lot of things that I learned just from having to help and plan and organize and trying to find what would be interesting to show the class up here.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very good.
Love it.
So there's a couple things that I know we haven't talked about yet, and we did a little talking before Brock turned the cameras on, but do we want to talk a little bit about Capstone projects?
Yeah. It's a part of the program that everybody does a project throughout while they're in the class. And it can be a big project, it can be a small project. Just the idea is to do something and then try to apply what you're learning and everything through the class. When I started, I was working for the museum and the Heritage Park here in McKenzie County. And we had been talking about ways to get more people to come out to the Heritage Park. I mean, it's a lot of space out there. And at the time, our farmers market met in a very small parking lot, the BNC Bank parking lot for many, many, many years. And that worked for many, many years. But we thought, what if we moved that out to the Heritage Park? And because there's more people that are looking for produce, with all the people that are coming in, and we were like, let's add some live music. And the Lions Club said, we'll bring burgers. And so it turned into a more than just a place to quick come get a vegetable transaction, but it was more come, spend 30 minutes, spend 45 minutes, meet your neighbor, those kind of things. And we had to move it once they were doing some construction over there to the Kent Pelton Nature Park. And it's still going. The Watford City Parks and Rec were able to take it over, and they've only added more things, and it still goes each summer. So we're excited about that project for sure.
It's an event. You go out to, not just like you say, not just a transaction anymore. It's an event to attend.
Yeah.
And
very cool.
Weekly event, and in 2020 it was about the only thing going on in the community.
You could social distance outside.
Yes.
Certainly. And Vicki, you talked a fair amount about your housing project.
So I can speak a little more on that. So on the housing side, we'd always talked about the need for additional housing, and I started out my project by researching and talking, HUD and different nonprofits and different things, and found out through that research that we have a lot of programs in the state, in the country for low income. And we just felt that wasn't our need. We felt there was lots of programs, adequate programs out there to help that segment. So it was more like, what do we do for just the moderate income people, or how do we get it built for just the moderate income people? There was a company doing some housing development, I believe, in eastern North Dakota. And through that project, they were proposing a Senate bill that would allow towns under the size of 5,000 and under to create a housing authority. So we followed that and did some research on that. And the city council, we proposed it, and the city council then made a statement that they were going to enact a housing authority. And from there, they appointed 5 members to that housing authority. And then once the housing authority was created, I served as secretary treasurer, and we looked for a project, or what could we do to help with the housing struggles. And we came to the conclusion that we were going to build 8 townhouses. So the first 8 townhouses that were built on our old bypass, they were built in probably finished in 2006, probably. We started the project in 2005, had a developer that came out and did that, and they have virtually been full since inception.
It's impressive, very impressive.
And it was a thought of, we had people coming to the community, and it probably wasn't the focus that that's where they would, but the elderly couple that was out on the farm, maybe they would move to town and it would free up a house out there, the same in town. Maybe somebody was living in a large single family house that it could be utilized by a big family coming in, and they could downsize to a town home and stuff. And that's kind of was the the goal and the mission. And so they are still rented today, and it's been a good project.
Yeah, nice job.
Very cool.
What did you do?
So my project was class 2011 through 13. And so we had our Watford City Centennial coming up. So I actually did Cowboys and Crude, the McKenzie County story, our first 100 years. And so much has happened in our last 20 years that we're trying to figure out how to get that updated. Yes, that documentary on our first 100 years premiered at our Watford City Centennial. And I think, Daniel, we actually twin showed that along with your 6 brothers.
Yeah.
So a lot of people came back. A lot of people. Yeah. So it was our opportunity to tell our story in our words. We had a lot of interest globally in our community during the time of the boom, and there were a lot of stories being told that were outside of, I guess, our thoughts on what our story should be. So we kind of took that back into our own hands, and
So that was like Mayor Sanford that you interviewed. He was mayor at the time, went on to become lieutenant governor. Yeah.
Yep. We had Brent Sanford. We had Dale Patton. We had Steve Stenjum. We had Neil Shipman. We had quite a few people. We had Fred Fridley. There was just a lot of. We actually, what I did is I went and found the funding and hired Media Men Incorporated, Media Men Inc., which was Cody Shimmick, a 91 graduate of Watford City High School. But Cody has his own business down in the Twin Cities, and he does a lot of cool stuff for ESPN. And, he's very much top of the line production. And so he came out and produced it for us. And I think it turned out well, and I think it served its purpose. And we probably do need to get it digitally because, yes, it's in DVD form. So again, aging myself. But let's talk real briefly as we come up with them. There are 10 alumni from our community.
10. At least 10, yeah.
At least 10.
Yep. And some of the projects that we recognize on any given day, and the first one that comes to my mind is the Children's Park just across the street from our visitor center. And that was
Renee Johnson, and she was part of Class 1 with me. So
geez.
She had
That's
Class 1.
Yes, she had a great project. And like you said, it's still today a highlight of our community.
Yeah.
So.
And it really set a statement. We've had quite a few people come into the community. They stop at the visitor center and they make comments along the lines like, look at you invest in youth and in families by placing that park on one of the busiest corners in the community, just solidifying that investment in our family-centric community. So,
I don't have the list in front of me. We've had class members we've had people from McKenzie County in nearly every class.
Almost every class,
So we have to make sure that this next class we get somebody.
Yes.
Do you have the list?
I do. I know Jan Dodge, we talked to earlier, she did something with the
Smithsonian Museum. Yeah, she got an
Museums
exhibit
on
here.
Main Street.
Yep, she got an exhibit here from the Smithsonian. It's pretty impressive.
I know Erica Johns-Rude, who's also Class 7, who's also on the RLND Council. She did art in the courthouse, which I think what's so great about all of these is it's showing really the true scale of these projects. Some of them may seem small, but the impact that they have still last up until this day. And some continue and some maybe have an ending point. It's a DVD, right? You had to end that. But now what can you do to expand it now? Or can a new RLND class member take that on and expand what you did already? Which that's really, I think, the amazing part of these projects.
Well, in every project you do, whether it's a successful project or an unsuccessful project, you can learn.
Learning.
You have learning potential for the next project or the next thing that you're doing. So I think that's yeah. Even when we do fail at some of our projects, that can be even better for the next time we do something because I'll do something different.
Right. Janelle Lee was part of the program too, and as times change, hers originally was a DVD to. For people recruiting to Watford City. And so it was sent out to those probably businesses, individuals, and, now that's no longer, but they probably still have something produced, and it's just, here, you go to this website and see it instead. You know, so we're still doing the same thing. It's just in a different form.
Nice.
Yeah.
So,
And it still takes, you have to brainstorm the idea.
Exactly.
Get people on the team, get your stuff together, and then make it happen. So some of those things don't change, but they're just what we're doing.
What it
looks like might look a little differently. Yeah.
So our other member of Class 2, along with Janelle Lee, was Peggy Helen Sauce. And at the time, I think Peggy was going kind of through the transition of, she had been the clinic RN for McKenzie, at the time, McKenzie County Healthcare Systems, now McKenzie Health. But since then, she has gone full-on entrepreneur, and she runs the Tobacco Garden concessions. And so for those who don't know, in McKenzie County, it's our only access point to Lake Sakakawea. And so
pretty big deal.
It's a big deal.
Very big deal.
Provides a huge
Resort and
service
marina.
for our community. Let's see. Jan.
Jan Dodge.
And April
2007.
Jepson, both.
I don't remember what April's project was, but
She's out of Kildare.
She's out of Kildare, yep.
Class 4.
I don't know that you had anyone
Maybe
in
that's
class
one
4.
we missed.
Yep,
We
you might have
missed
missed class 4.
Yeah, we need
missed
to.
one.
Can't go back.
to-
That's all right, because class 5 came in, then there was Vawnita.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
Only one.
Yep.
Only one. Pastor Bob Lawson. I don't know what Bob's project was, but
Was it with trafficking? Human trafficking, maybe? Anti-human trafficking?
It might have
Not
been.
Pro.
good point of clarification.
Yes.
And actually, I didn't know this, but a member of Class 6 was Will Meyer, which Will didn't graduate from here, I don't think, but he grew up here, so that was cool. And then they moved.
Yeah, and then Class 7, oh man, there's only 3 of us.
Yeah.
There's
There was
3 of us
three of you from
McKenzie County.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had Greg Schutze.
Here's Erica.
And myself and Erica Johnsrud. So
yeah.
And yes, you do have a few former senators. And does anybody want to talk about that statistic?
I think that was one of Daniel's first points of
That was the first tally mark.
of the wonders of Class 7. But yes, I think that when we look at the alumni network that is RLND, we have so many wonderful leaders, whether they're in our state legislature, which of course is something that we need desperately. 1 in 13 North Dakotans need to step up to fill leadership roles. And so it's lovely to see our own RLND family stepping up. But beyond that, I think if you look at, a lot of our alumni have also stepped up to be mayors, to be city council people, to be on water boards, to be on township boards. And all of those things are filling a need in our rural communities. And so I think what's really fun is when we get to see that from the alumni. And I believe in a few years here, we'll be surveying our alumni again to say, what have you done since you graduated, to see what those those roles look like from a long-term impact. And so it's not just Class 7 that has those wonderful leaders, but Class 7 does have several that are currently serving.
Katie, can you give that statistic again on the ratio of people it takes to participate in board services and community engagement to make a community work?
So Ben Winchester out of the University of Minnesota did a study for us in North Dakota, and he found that 1 in 13 North Dakotans over the age of 18 need to step up to fill all open leadership positions. And that includes not-for-profit, so boards, organizations, community leaderships, and governmental roles. So again, city councils, township boards, those things. And so rural North Dakota often has a higher need, of course, than that. That is their overall state average. But yeah, we need leaders in rural North Dakota to make it work. even if we try to make our government more efficient and have less boards, we still have one of the highest needs in the country for how many leaders we need. And so we recognize that not everyone might feel confident stepping up to some of those roles without a little bit of training. And I think RLND is one way to get that.
Excellent.
We also had Suhail. I recruited him for the next class. He was a county engineer.
Do you want to share where Suhail is today? Because it's really quite an interesting.
He was recruited by the city of Houston to become the city engineer of Houston, Texas, and so to go from the roads of McKenzie County to the streets of Houston is a pretty impressive jump.
It is.
Very cool.
Also, the new Commerce Commissioner in North Dakota was an RLND alum, Class 4, I believe. So we have RLND's alums, helping lead our state in varying capacities, which I think is also really exciting.
Okay, so you have a class coming up.
Yes.
And all of us want to see somebody from McKenzie County represented. So much so, at our Job Development Authority board last night, we said that we would like to scholarship someone from McKenzie County if we can get somebody. So all of you listeners out there who this is kind of piquing your interest a little bit, look into the program some more. It is a big commitment. And I'll get in touch with myself or someone else with McKenzie County JDA, because it is, how much does it cost to do the program?
Yep. So it cost $4,500 is the tuition. So that's over the course of 2 years. It costs about $16,000 to send someone through RLND. That's for all experiences, but what we actually charge the class member is $4,500, which is payable in 2 installments, so you don't have to pay that all up front. Often we have employers who help sponsor, or other organizations that can help give scholarships within your local community, or we can try to help you find those at other levels if that would be needed. There's, of course, some other expenses that come along, some RLND swag, promotional, maybe clothing, as well as travel to and from the in-state seminars is not included.
But international is included?
International is included, from the airfare to from a regional airport that does international flights. And so, yes, travel to and from that, and same as DC, the airfare is included. It's just driving from Watford to, say, Fargo would not be included for a Fargo seminar if that was the case. The application is open now, and so I encourage you all to look, and alumni or community members can also nominate someone online. And so that's always an option too. If you're like, I think this person would be great, but I'm not sure they want to do it, I'm happy to reach out or have a local alumni reach out if they know them, to say, this is why we think you'd be a good fit for this program. It is a time commitment, so making sure you look at those dates and making sure the dates for the upcoming class work in your schedule is important.
And those dates are set and they can see them online on the application?
Yes, the dates are set and they can see them online, all except for the international trip. That'll be February, for class 11, that'll be February of 2026. No, I'm sorry, 2027. And a time frame within the month of February, and we'll know that a year out. It's just that we don't have the location yet, so we don't have the dates set quite yet.
And then, is the JDA's a full scholarship or
yes,
partial?
That's the plan. We'll see how many people are interested from the county, but yeah, we want the cost to not be a barrier. We recognize the value. I mean, looking at the projects that have happened, the leaders that have come out of the program, we want to see more of that. We want to see that continue in McKenzie County, and so that's what why the board wants to see this happen. So, and how do people find out? Or, what do they on the web? Is it?
Yep. So if you go to our website, which a shortened link is ag.ndsu.edu/RLND, that'll take you to our main website, and you can find the application. You can find seminar recaps from each of Class 10's seminars, so you could look to see what the current class is up to and doing, kind of get a feel for what those seminars look like. And then you'll also find the application. So there is an interview process. I'm sure you all remember remember the interview, which hopefully isn't as scary as perhaps it may sound for some. It's more of a meet and greet and a chance for you to get to ask you, the applicant, to get to ask questions to myself as well as some council members to talk about whether or not this is a good fit for you and what the class looks like. So you apply online and then you go through an interview, and then the council selects the class members. Like I said, we're trying to get to 20 to 22 size for a class. That's our goal. And so we'll see how many applicants we have and how many spots we can fill.
And for those listening out there, the interview truly is low-key, very meet and greet in fashion. So not intimidating at all. And I would say we'll drop some of this information in the show notes too. But if you Google RLND, the website does pop right up. One question I do have, Katie, is when does the application process close?
Good question. So the application will close on May 31st. 2025 for class 11. And so we ask that you try to apply by then. You'll also need to submit some references. If you're self-employed, we'll need 3 references. If you are employed with an employer, you'll need 2, and then we'll send one to your employer, who will also sign an employer release, just so the employer that you're working for understands the time commitment that the program does require. Just so then it protects everyone involved of we know that the employer is aware of the time constraints that the program has for the seminar dates, essentially. But we have a lot of self-employed members of the classes too, and we welcome applicants from there. We really try to serve everyone. We've had everyone from a pastor to a lawyer to farmers and ranchers to bankers. I think that we try to create a class that truly has a variety of occupations, ages, folks that really are all working towards the common goal of helping communities, not necessarily all in the same field. And so I think that's another fun part of RLND is you get this network of people that kind of create some of those aha moments of, I didn't realize that maybe I had as much in common with these as I did. So.
Very cool. Excellent. You're closing.
I'm closing.
No pressure.
Any other comments that we've missed?
No, we're even on tally marks, so that might be a good place to end.
Oh, all right. Fair enough. So in the spirit of Marie Vidston, who was the director for 20 years until Katie came in to take her place after she retired, Marie would always like to end with a quote. And so I found a quote.
Oh, I love it.
That I don't know the author, bad marks for me. It said unknown, actually. But strong communities are built by people who care enough to take action. And so I think that just really, it kind of fits the rural theme. That's what communities are made out of. People care enough to get involved in the 4-H or city housing, city council, all of those different opportunities. Do you care about your community? Do you want to see some change? Let's try to get involved. This program is a tool to maybe amplify your goal, amplify your readiness. Everybody always starts out a little bit unprepared, but this can give you a little bit more legs up or more things to think about when you do that first leadership role. And so just I'll end with it again. Strong communities are built by people who care enough to take action. So thank you all for listening. Thank you guys for coming. Have a good day.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.